How's it going, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome to a brand new and updated deck profile for Mermail's Post-Eternity Code. Yes, my official Post-Eternity Code Mermail deck profile. I believe the last time I updated this deck was about 33 days ago or something like that. So just been a little over a month. And this deck list is obviously going to look a lot different than the previous one because we have our Eternity Code cards in here, ranging from the Deep Sea support, as well as all the other main and extra deck changes that come with those cards, to sort of accommodate them. So we're going to go ahead and get into our standard way of doing deck profiles. But before we go any further, of course, I want to make a quick shout out to Imperium Duelist. If you guys are interested in picking up these sleeves I'm rocking here, these beautiful pink sleeves on the back, with the nice texturing and of course the black on the inside. You can find them on their website. Same with the ones that I'm using here on the extra deck. They've got the white backs with the wine color insides. And then of course this playmat you could also find on their website as well, alongside some other amazing dice, deck boxes, stickers, sleeves, things like that. So guys, check them out if you haven't already. You can use that discount code WinterKills10 off to save 10% off your entire order. So yeah, really great deal if you ask me. I believe they're still doing a buy two get one free sale on their sleeves, so you guys should take advantage of that if you haven't. And of course, if you guys are buying anything on TCG Player, as always, do not forget to use that affiliate link located down in the description below of all my videos. That first link, if you guys click on that link, shop and check out using that link, I'll get a small bit of kickback from the revenue of your purchase, and it does go a long way to help out. So with all that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get into the profile here. And to start with our standard profile, of course, we have none other than 3 copies of Mermail Abyss Teus. Following that, 2 copies of Mermail Abyss Megalo, 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Pike, 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Mander, 1 copy of Mermail Abyss Gund. And that rounds out our Mermails. Now we'll go into the other water monsters we have here, which are 3 Deep Sea Diva, feels crazy to say, 3 Nephtabis the Atlantean Prince, 3 Atlantean Dragoons, then we have 3 copies of Atlantean Heavy Infantry, and 1 copy of Marksman. And then the other miscellaneous waters, 1 Moulin Glacia, 1 Lapis Dragon, 2 copies of Aqua Spirit, 2 copies of Fishborg Launcher, and that rounds out the entire monster lineup. Yes, no Deep Sea Minstrel. Then we have 3 Deep Sea Aria here for the spells, 3 copies of Call by the Grave, 2 copies of Moray of Greed, 1 copy of 1 for 1, 1 Pot of Avarice, 1 Salvage, 1 Abyssgale the Mizuchi, and 1 Upstart Goblin, and that'll round out the spell lineup. Now we'll run into the extra deck real quick, where we have first our Link monsters consisting of Mermail Abyssalacia, Marincess Coral Anemone, Miss Starboy, Crystron Helka Fibrax, and Bujinki Ahashima. And then going into our Xyz, we have True King of All Calamities, Mermail Abyss Gaios, Abyss Dweller, Bahamut Shark, and Totally Awesome. That is it for our Xyz and Links. Now for our Synchros, we have 1 Formula Synchron, 1 Adamancipator Risen Dragite, 1 Ravenous Crocosaur Arquetus, 1 Trishula Dragon of the Ice Barrier, and last but not least, 1 Satellite Warrior. And that'll round out the entirety of the extra deck and the main deck. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and go into the deck breakdown. Alright, so now the deck has been separated into roles, starters, superior extenders, additional extenders, defense, and removal. So we're going to run through the deck again, but based on those categories, and talk about each individual card's role within the deck. And if you guys are new to this type of stuff, this is the deck breakdown. It's a little bit more informative and in-depth than the profile we just did, so stick around if you want to get a little bit more knowledge on the deck. So to start, we have, of course, 3 Mermail Abyss Teus. So the main reasoning behind this card is obviously it single-handedly is the most cost-efficient Mermail within the deck. It requires 1 discard of a water monster and is a part of probably the best 2-card combo that exists within this entire archetype, which is this card combined with Atlantean Dragoons. It just gets you so much value. You can pitch the Dragoons off this to grab Diva, and then grab another extender like Gund off of the Teus, and just keep comboing from there. Teus Dragoons used to be an extra link, used to be a hand loop for 5, or probably is a hand loop for 5 currently. This card is insane, strictly because of the fact it takes 1 water to discard and gets you a card back in the process, and especially when you pair it with a card like Dragoons, it gets even better. Now moving forward here, another starter card we have is the Mermail Abyss Megalo. Playing 2 copies, very, very searchable card. I think 2 is a fine number. I think 1 is probably too little. I think 3 is too much unless you're playing multiple copies of Desires. I think that's totally fine to play 3, if you're, like, again, if you're playing Desires. But now with how powerful Diva is, with the amount of plays that you can do with Diva, especially with cards like the Bujinki Link and Needle Fiber and all of these things, I think Megalo has sort of become a bit more higher priority, simply because of the fact it can trigger Dragoons without having to burn your normal summon. So even if you open Megalo, Dragoons, and Marksman, you can use Megalo to pitch the Dragoons to grab Diva and keep going and have a much better and more productive turn. So that is why I like Abyss Megalo as a starter card specifically, because again, it gives us access to trigger some of our most powerful cards. It does take one more discard than that of Teus, so it's a little lower down on the chain of starter cards, but it still gets you a card back in the process in the form of Mizuchi. It's just an all-around great card, I think, hands down. But definitely could be considered a superior extender in some cases. So moving on, we have 3 Deep Sea Diva, the best normal summon within the entire deck. It gets out Prince, which gets our entire engine going, resolving copies of Dragoons, adding cards like Mulan, Infantry, and Megalo to our hand to continue to make more plays with. So this card, single-handedly, the best starter card within the entire deck next to Teus, because this card doesn't require anything else to go along with it. The other 2 cards we just mentioned require discards. This one obviously does not. It just requires to not get hand trapped, which we are playing 3 Called by the Grave, so we do have a bit of protection for that, that scenario. But this card is absolutely fantastic. It gets a lot better when you pair this card with Heavy Infantry, which is another card we'll talk about a little bit later. Heavy Infantry in some cases can be considered a starter, so I'll mention that now. But only so, I would say, if you have it to pair with something like Deep Sea Diva, because that'll give you easy access to the Bujin Link, which means you get easy access to rank 4s like Bahamut and Dweller. But yeah, Diva's absolutely fantastic. Still can't believe that it's at 3. Then moving on here, the best starter, one of the best starters, I should say. I've said that about pretty much every card here so far, but Neptibus the Atlantean Prince. Send Dragoons, send an Atlantean to add an Atlantean, primarily going to be Dragoons, but single-handedly, the engine starter. This is the fuel for the whole engine, or even just this is the engine. The fuel, I guess, would be your Dragoons, your Atlanteans. This is the card that gets them all going at a moment's notice. This card it's fantastic. There's a reason we play 3 Diva, because Diva gets this card. Diva only exists to get Neptibus out of the deck, so this card, hands down, is extremely important, because again, you can trigger Dragoons immediately, not only to trigger Dragoons, but to get one to your hand to pair with another card like Megalo to ultimately trigger Dragoons again and slowly build your field and grab more combo pieces. So that is that. And then, of course, the last starter card here, 1 for 1. Because again, it gets you access to Prince at the cost of simply just 1 discard. So one thing I want to mention here, I guess, as we'll move forward into the superior extenders, as why I haven't included Deep Sea Aria in this category here. Well, just simply based on the definition of a starter card, I just don't feel as though it fits wholly as a starter card. I can't really justifiably say it as a starter card, because it will take some bit of setup. It will require to you have already used some of your starting cards, some of your best starter cards, in order to make it live, because it does require a water monster into the graveyard. Granted, in some cases it can be a starter card if you're summoning like Teus by discarding Gund and then banishing the Gund to search Diva and then going off from there. But it's a very weak starter. It does have a bit of a crutch to it in the fact that it does need to banish one from the grave. Now, if it banished one from hand or grave, then I would consider it a starter hands down. But that requirement of banishing one from grave, I would say, is what makes it fall under the superior extender category. Very close to a starter for sure. But we have 3 Atlantean Dragoons here, hands down a superior extender. Very easy to trigger within this deck, just needs to be discarded to activate the effect of a water monster, or sent to the graveyard rather to activate the effect of a water monster. Hands down, this is a card you're trying to resolve as many times as possible within a given turn, because again, it's going to search you some of your better cards. Mulan Glacia, Lapis Dragon, Neptibus, Deep Sea Diva, Megalo, you name it, this card will get you that card if need be. Then we have a copy of Pike and a copy of Gund. Pike is so important in this deck is because it facilitates the anti-Nibiru Teus Dragoons combo that I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with. And he is that level 4 discard outlet that will allow you to discard the Prince in order to revive the Dragoons, make a rank 4, etc, etc. So this card, very important. Just wanted to play one, though, to be able to snag off that Teus Dragoons play. And the gun, of course, to be searched off the Pike if need be. Gun is hands down, has always been a superior extender for this deck. Discard it. If it's discarded, rather, special summon a Mermail from your graveyard. Fantastic card all around. I was playing 2, but decided to cut it to make a little more room for some other cards. Then we have 3 Deep Sea Aria. Yes, the brand new search spell out of Eternity Code. Still haven't gotten mine yet. I'm still waiting for things to probably become available in North America to pick this card up. So happy it's a secret rare. But Deep Sea Aria, again, banish a water monster from your graveyard as cost. Add a level 4 or lower Sea Serpent monster from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 Deep Sea Aria per turn. So again, this card is fantastic. Outright, I cannot doubt that. It can search you cards like Prince. It can search you cards like Diva to start your turn if you have that graveyard set up already. That's why I've been previously a fan of cards like White Stingray, because it is a level 4 extender that sets up a grave for a card like Deep Sea Aria. But again, it does require setup. I can't say this card is 100% a starter card because it's just really not. That would be like saying like Necro Slime is a starter card. It just needs to, you need a little bit of setup. You cannot deny that fact. You do need a little bit of setup. And this card also fits greatly as an extender. It doesn't really necessarily need to get you cards like Prince or Diva. This card can grab you cards like Infantry to set up cards like the Ravenous Crocodragon. This card could set up, additional extension by grabbing another Dragoons from the deck, or manipulate the graveyard of the water count to make Moulin Glacier setups a bit easier. So this card I do like hands down 100%. And then moving on here, still to some of our superior extenders, is 2 copies of Aqua Spirit. Again, setting up rank 4s in this deck has never been more important because getting to that Toad on that 5th summon is very crucial if you're really trying to play around Nibiru at all times. So I do like Aqua Spirit. Again, I have thought about this becoming White Stingray because of the simple fact that you can get a discard outlet very early on, simply to make a card like Deep Sea Aria live. But Aqua Spirit, I've just always liked this card hands down. It doesn't require the discard. We have so many cards in this deck that require discards. Aqua Spirit does not. So this card is in some cases a bit easier to, use as an extender. In this case, a superior extender could be also considered additional. But again, this card is great, hands down. And the last 2 superior extenders I have here are Moray of Greed. Moray of Greed, I think, is probably the best / worst draw spell for this deck. And what do I mean by that? There are some cases where you could, say, have Teus Dragoons with this card in your hand and no other water monsters. At that point, Moray simply becomes a dead card, which is very unfortunate because you're obviously not going to want to gamble away your Teus Dragoons in hopes of drawing Teus Dragoons Megalo. If you do, you probably should go buy a lottery ticket after that. But Moray of Greed, it does in some cases come in very clutch. I cannot deny that. Sometimes you're putting back cards like Aqua Spirit and Marksman, and then you're drawing Teus Dragoons, you're drawing Diva Prince or Diva Infantry, whatever it may be, and it really does save you. This card, though, it's great. I think okay, it's okay for now, especially because like Desires is one of those cards that I think is just a better draw spell inherently because of the less restrictions it has. Some you just play it, banish 10, draw 2, but it does slightly alter how the deck has to be built, which for this particular list I wasn't too fond of. And I think with the added consistency bonus that Area offers, I think Moray of Greed is just fine. And one thing particularly about my list, you'll notice there's no cards like Auroradon in here and the new Gizmek, strictly because, A, to help make this card live as much as possible, and B, with a deck that strictly has so many amazing cards that require strictly water cards to be able to activate their effects with, I wanted to keep the main deck 100% all water monsters to avoid as many conflictions as possible, because sometimes those conflictions will lead to outright game losses, especially when you have a deck like this that can have inconsistencies, does have inconsistencies, and requires heavily on certain cards needing water monsters to be able to discard and activate their effects for. So Moray of Greed, hands down, an amazing superior extender. Now we're going to go to the additional extenders, cards that build upon the plays that our starters make, our superior extenders make, etc., etc. These cards don't offer too much in terms of consistency, but offer greatly in terms of power. First and foremost, Moulin Glacia, the Elemental Lord. Obviously, if you have 5 engraved, special summon it, drop 2 from the opponent's hand. This card has been a mainstay, a centerpiece within this strategy since its inception, all the way back in Abyss Rising and, you know, Cosmo Blazer era. So this card is fantastic. It will be, it obviously does take great amounts of setup, 5 waters exactly in the graveyard. So yeah, this card is amazing. Lapis Dragon, when added from deck to hand, you can reveal it and special it. When added back from grave, you can reveal it and special it, but gets banished when it leaves the field. This card is great because it gives this deck easy in-engine access to Needle Fiber, which is fantastic because that gets you Fishborg Launcher, which helps you make either Trish or add Emancipator, Risen Dragite, which is really great. So it's awesome that we have a Searchable Sea Serpent. That's also a tuner that hits the board just to make Needle Fiber. And since I've cut Brionic from the extra deck, as you saw earlier, this card's main purpose now is essentially to help make Needle Chief whenever we need it. Next up here we have Mermail Abyss Mander, which is obviously fantastic for making True Kings of all calamities in this deck. This card has been in and out of my deck for quite some time, but now I figured with having a good diehard and somewhat more consistent going for a strategy, I wanted to play the Abyss Mander because it gives me the opportunity, anytime I do see Teus, as boring and redundant as the play can be sometimes, you know, you do get access to the VFD, which is great. Not only that, it's a level 4, which does play in greatly when you're trying to, you know, use the Bujin Link, because you can use the Bujin Link to get this out of the hand if need be, to be able to make Dweller or Bahamut to get Toad. So it just helps to also add to the accessibility of Bahamut Shark, which is really great. I'm not playing the Frog engine strictly because I didn't want to play another engine in here that added in an engine requirement like that of Ronin Totem. I know a lot of people say, you know, they're not playing the Frog engine to get access to Toad easier, even though, because like this deck obviously excels at making Bahamut Shark as is, and it does seem a bit redundant, but I see the fact that it can be used to just add 2 link plays. I just felt that that was unnecessary, at least for my particular build, as I'm used to playing this deck a certain way without the Frog engine. I've never really been too big of a fan of the Frog engine, strictly because if you're relying on that particular engine to make a hand better, it oftentimes does require you to discard a lot of cards and invest in a lot of resources essentially just for one totally awesome as your only play in you know, bad hand situations. Obviously it does make good hands a bit better, but not so much better, at least for me, to warrant playing them. So yeah, that's just my hot take. And then we have 2 Fishborg Launcher, obviously a main Needle Fiber target to summon from the deck. But this card is amazing. It's a water monster, so even if we draw it, we can still use it to discard certain things, or as discard fodder, I should say. Then the other additional extenders here, we have our Pot of Avarice and Salvage. Recycling our Dragoons is next to, you know, just so important. Salvage, this card I wanted to experiment playing again because of the Ravenous Crocodile and getting back free resources, essentially, to be able to discard during the opponent's turn. So, since basically Crocodile is a mainstay now within my extra deck for Mermail, I wanted to experiment with that. Now we're going to move to defense here. 3 Call by the Grave. Hand traps do hurt this deck, and they always will hurt this deck so long as cards like Droll and Lockbird and Ash Blossom are legal within the format. You have so many great combos that stem from Deep Sea Diva, but Deep Sea Diva, if ashed, it does not do anything else for you. So you need a card like Call by the Grave within this deck, or in some cases, if Deep Sea Aria is your only saving grace and they do ash it, you need something in the deck at least to have a chance at responding to that particular card, so you can at least try to play. 1 Mizuchi, this defensive card is insane. It stops Dark Ruler No More and stops Super Polymerization, which is incredible, and it's so searchable off of your Mermail Abyss Megalo. So the card, hands down, is fantastic. Then for removal here, we have our in-engine spot removal. 3 copies of Heavy Infantry. Wanted to bump to 3 strictly because I've realized now how much better it is. Like, it's always been a good play, you know, to normal infantry, then use the additional normal summon effect to normal deep. Diva, but it's even so much better now because you're getting 2 level 2s on the field to be able to make the Boojin Link, and at a bare minimum get access to the Bahamut Shark and Toad play just off of that Diva combo. So it is really nice. And of course, in-engine searchable spot removal of face-up cards. Same thing could be said with the Atlantean Marksman. So that is it for our removal. And then our placeholder card, the 1 Upstart Goblin, making this deck list 39 cards. So it's consistent as we can make it. So that's it for the main deck breakdown. Now we're going to run through the extra deck where you guys might have noticed a few changes. We'll start with the synchros. First and foremost here, we'll start with just these 3. We have the Formula Synchron, the Adamantipator, Risen Dragite, the Ravenous Crocosaur. I forget what its actual TCG name is, but these are the current 5 synchros that I'm playing. These have all been, I think, the synchros that I've gone to most consistently. Formula and Satellite Warrior are the newest additions, thanks to a little recommendation I got the other day, because I ended on a board that ended with just Dragite and Synchron, and I'd already burned my Dragite, and I was like, you know, what if I had, wouldn't it be cool if I could tag out my Needle Fiber into Formula and then Synchro into Satellite and get 2 more disruptions in the form of his unsummon effect. So I figured I'd add that in, and also you get a draw in the process. So anytime you can add back hand advantage from a deck like this that so easily eats through hand advantage through all of its discard effects, it's a no-brainer. So Formula mainly just existing to get access to Satellite through the Dragite, which you can make pretty consistently in this deck, so long as you're seeing cards like Diva and Prince, which, I mean, in most cases you should be seeing them, or else you're not going to be doing much to begin with. Dragite, again, fantastic card, great interruption card to put up against the opponent because you can have an answer to cards like Evenly Matched. Crocosaur, this card is amazing. Unfortunately, I did have to cut the Mecha Phantom Beast Draco Sack because I wanted to play cards like VFD, cards that I feel like I would get more consistent use from. But this card is great because it puts up multiple interruptions on the opponent's turn and can help trigger cards like Dragoons and Infantry for either more extension or more disruption. Trishula, great, helps to add to the hand looping factor that I wanted my build to have. Because with Needle Fiber and more access to tuners, you do get better access to cards like Trish, so wanted to keep that in. And Satellite Warrior, again, for the Synchron Dragite play. So yeah, that's it for our synchros. Now we'll run through the Xyz monsters next, I believe, where we have True King of All Calamities. We have Mermail, Abyss Gaios. We, of course, have Bahamut Shark, Abyss Dweller, and Totally Awesome. True King of All Calamities, an amazing, almost too powerful floodgate to have access to in this deck. I don't think anybody should be able to play this card. This card is absurd. But we have Abyss Mander, which ultimately can banish it from the grave to increase all Mermail's level by 1 or 2, making your 7s 9s, thus being able to go into True King of All Calamities. So in some cases, if you just have access to like Teus with a Megalo on board, you can get to True King of All Calamities, which some cases might steal you games, where otherwise, maybe if you weren't playing Mander, you might not be able to win the game as easily. Gaios has been a staple in this deck since its inception, equipable with the equip spell, which is one reason I sometimes like it better than True King of All Calamities, because you can use that Abyss Scale on this card to not only make it 3600, but also have the ability to negate a spell like Dark Ruler No More or Super Probably Bahamut Shark, again existing for Toad, and the fact that both of these cards exist as rank 4s that can trigger Dragoon's effect when it's detached is great, because they can sort of act as pseudo extenders. Dweller, this card, a lot of people I've heard say they've cut Dweller. I just can't cut I cannot bring myself to cut this card, because I know the second I cut it, it might be nice to add in something else that I've been wanting to play, maybe like a Desert Locust or a Bryanak, or maybe a Draco Sack or a Link Karibo. I'm gonna play against a deck that this card will absolutely crush, and I'm just gonna regret every moment of it. So, and then Toad, again, just the engine requirement essentially for the Bahamut. And that's how we're getting access to it off of its effect. And then last but not least, we have our links. This is a generic link to sort of clear space with and also gain resources back in the process. Bujinki is a mainstay in a lot of combos. I find myself often making this card with level 1s or level 2s. because that way you're not, you know, you're having 4s in hand and grave still left over to work with to make it Bahamut Shark or make Dweller. Anemone is incredible, a part of some of your best combos, and can also late game revive cards like Prince to be able to continue to make plays with. Halqifibrax, again, mainstay of a lot of combos to get access to either Diva from the deck or your Fishborg launcher, and then Alacia, of course. Your hands down best water link to end on because it is equipable with the equip spell and can also provide an additional interruption if you have a card like Infantry in hand. So that is it for the extra deck. Now we're going to talk about side decking here. Of course, I will put up a mock side deck on the screen. So for me personally, things you could side out would be a copy of the Infantry. You could also look to possibly side out one copy of Called by the Grave or all of them, depending on what you're playing against. Salvage and Avarice, in my opinion, are cards that will probably always get sided out in some situations. Same thing with one copy of the Fishborg launcher. You could look to side out a copy of Aqua Spirit also. And then just thumbing through the rest of the cards here, there's really not much else. Arguably, again, you could look to siding out multiple copies of Call by the Grave. You could potentially side out Deep Sea Aria since we are playing 3. Maybe a Moray of Greed, but I wouldn't recommend siding out Draw Power too much. But essentially, these are the cards that I would probably look to side out in most cases, if not all. And again, it really depends on what we're playing against, but yeah. Alright, so for this last part of the video, I wanted to address the main reason as to why I'm not playing Deep Sea Minstrel. I just personally do not like this card whatsoever. I found it's very, very lackluster when not paired with Atlantean Dragoons. When these two cards are paired together, sure, it's great. You get to take a card out of your opponent's hand, potentially something like Ash or Nibiru, to be able to grab Diva and to be able to combo off with. But any other situation where you don't have those golden 2 cards together, essentially a New Age Teus Dragoons, it just feels very lackluster. You're getting nothing back to your hand to work with, and you do get a little bit of hand knowledge, sure, but it puts so much pressure on the other 3 cards in your hand having to be very good, that like it just, I think, narrows your chances of trying to put up a good board, when I'd rather just have a hand of 5 solid extenders that I could do a ton of plays with, and even if I do perhaps get Nibiru'd, I can maybe even continue to make a little bit more plays afterwards. Because again, these 2 cards paired together are great, I'm not doubting that, but every other situation where you don't have that, this card has just felt extremely lackluster to me. I've tried this card, testing it out on stream, I do not like it. And maybe at some point my mind will change about it, but I just do not like this card strictly in here for a few reasons. I would just have other extenders, and I would just rather rely on the simple standard anti-Nibiru combos that this deck is capable of pulling off anyways. And if it's Teus Dragoons, it's Teus Dragoons, right? Because this essentially is also Teus Dragoons. That's just the way I look at it. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. Feel free to completely disregard my build because I'm not playing this card. I do not care. I don't like this card at the moment, and it's staying out of my deck for now. So yeah, as always, guys, hope you enjoyed. Winter Kill signing out. We'll see you guys in the next one.